Welcome back to part 5. It's been a while since the last episode, so this one's a little bit longer than normal. If you can subscribe, please subscribe. If you can't subscribe, what are you doing? Anyway, let's get on with the episode. Well, as the season comes to a close and the garden looks like it's giving up its fruits and going to sleep, a Les Paul waits for no man. We're back in the workshop and we're ready to carry on with our build. The body is pretty much complete in the sort of woodwork sense. I've struggled with it and I've thought, well, maybe, once it's on a strap it'll be fine, but it's too heavy. So the only way that I can think of reducing the weight of this body is to take some material off it. And it is currently just a little bit too deep. So what I plan to do is take about, a quarter of an inch off of it, 6mm, just take it off across the back, because that's flat at this point. We haven't yet put any cutaways in here for control cavities or anything like that. So I'm gonna basically take 6mm, quarter of an inch off the back of it and make it thinner, and by doing so, make it lighter. The method of losing that 6mm is going to be by using this box. Now this box is just slightly taller than the body when it lies in the box. I've got enough space around the edge to collect the debris and also give me some working space. And then on top of that, I'm going to be placing this metal frame, which is a form of sled. And onto that, I'm going to put my router, and my router is going to move backwards and forwards, and I'm going to advance it like this and work my way across the back of the guitar, removing that 6mm, hopefully evenly, leaving myself with minimal cleanup. These of course are famous last words. I've never done this before, I've only just made this, so let's give it a go. It's always difficult to know how much of this sort of operation to leave in the film. It has to be done, and some people find this sort of thing incredibly interesting, and I suspect there's other people that find it incredibly dull. So I'm just going to leave this here for now, and maybe you can tell me, because I just never know. Well, as nerve-wracking as that was, I'm pretty pleased with this. I mean, it's got some marks on it, but, compared to what I would have had to have dealt with, let's just take this off. Raise that up, plonk that down there, take the sledge off, sledge. And, yeah, here we go. It's thinner. Just a little bit more sanding required to get it absolutely flat. So it's back to the random orbital. At the risk of sounding like your mum, I'm just going to repeat my usual warning. When you do this sort of thing, you've got to ventilate the area properly. So wear a good mask and open a window afterwards and get rid of that dust. Well, Welcome to the English autumn. As you can probably hear, there is rain hammering on the roof. Anyway, forget about hammering. There we go. We are... Oh, and the rain's gone off. Just like that. Here we are. So, we've now taken off a good 6mm, a good 1/4 inch, and it is actually appreciably lighter. And I'm very happy with that. That's great, actually. Here it is. It's all back in the body. The body is to, I think, a better depth than it was, actually. I think it was always a little bit thick, and I knew that right from the front, but it was very heavy, and now it doesn't feel quite so daunting. In fact, it feels actually really quite well balanced. So I'm chuffed with that. Looking forward to cracking on with the rest of the build. Well, I hope you can hear me over the rain, but yeah, as you can see, the build is really beginning to take shape now. And on the subject of shape, one of the things I'm going to have to do is to shape the edges of the body and round over all the way around, being careful not to round off too much when I get towards the very delicate parts here where the neck is fitted. But I need to do front and back. I need to round over all of these edges. Now the temptation is to use a router for that, and I think probably I'm going to do it. Well, even though I'm not a tremendous expert at doing this, I'm going to give it a go. And if I mess it up, you'll know all about it. Well, that was exciting, and I think a few bits to clean up, but basically it's done. The rounding over of the edge of the guitar went really well, and to be honest with you, I've never done it with a router before. I tend to do these things very often with just a hand tool and just do it by hand and, you know, use a rasp or what have you. But I have to say that using that bottom bearing bit with a sort of 1/4 inch round on it was extremely successful and was really quick and accurate, so I'm very happy with that. But it doesn't completely solve the problem because it does leave bits you can't get to. The bearing on the routing bit runs out at certain points, and you've got nowhere to run it, so it stops, which is quite a surprise at the time. So I've got to finish off these little bits just where the neck joins here. Just got to finish them off by hand, and also this very thin piece here, which is left over from where you cut the neck joint, is actually quite flimsy, so I didn't really want to go down there, even though it probably would have taken it. It might have been a bit wobbly, so I'm going to finish that with a chisel or some sandpaper or something. So let's do those bits. Mahogany is really soft, so it goes really quickly. So you've got to be a bit careful, otherwise you can overshoot. Over there. I always turn the chisel upside down so that it doesn't dive into the wood. Okay, I think this is probably enough for now. I'll get a second bite of the cherry on this when I put the neck in. My favourite tool, of course, cabinet scraper. They're so similar to using a plane, it really is. That's enough. I'm now kind of wishing I started with the cabinet scraper. So often the way. Wonderful. Okay, that's enough. Lovely. As you probably know, whenever I get to a significant part of a build, I just can't help myself. I've got to put it together. And this bit is particularly good because there's pretty much no more woodwork to do on this guitar. Nothing significant anyway, apart from cutting out a few bits and pieces for controls. The actual shape of the guitar is now set, and the rounding over of the body just makes it feel so, I don't know, it's giving it a sort of squishy feel, touchy-feely. I'm really absolutely loving this. So I'm going to stop there for today. I don't think I can carry on, not because I'm not well or that I don't want to. It's just that I just got a text a minute ago and I've just become a grandfather for the third time. So I'm going to go in and make some phone calls and probably pour myself something really special to drink. So I will see you all very shortly. No, that wasn't the end of the episode after all. I'm back in the workshop and I just wanted to talk about phasing, the order in which we do things, being phasing in this context. The temptation is to glue the neck in as soon as you possibly can, get the guitar all up together and in one piece and work on it. But by doing that, we actually make putting in frets and putting side dots in on the neck actually more difficult. So let's put some side dots in. So I marked the neck up with a pencil and then got ready to make my punch marks, then realised I'd done the thing that I did about 10 years ago, which was mark them all up on the wrong side of the neck. So I quickly scrubbed all those off with my finger and I've started again. And I'm just going to centre punch where I want the drill to locate and get this absolutely spot on. I do this so that when I put the drill in it doesn't skate around and I end up putting a drill hole in the wrong place. Yeah, they're looking good. Okay, this is the octave, so this gets two of them. That's one, and then the other one needs to go just there. I just eyeball this. You might want to get your micrometer out, but my own personal feeling is I'm pretty good at guesstimating centre, so I do. And so far I've been alright at this, but you know, we're all different. There. Now there's a disaster, because I've just knocked a great big piece off the side of the fingerboard. These things happen. So what you witnessed there was a classic guitar making disaster. I've just put a bit of super glue straight onto it, pulled some tape tight across it, left it to set for about 30-40 seconds, and it's actually faultless. You will never find that particular break. It happens all the time. You would be staggered the number of makeshift repairs and general rescues that you end up doing on a build. It happens all the time. So let's just crack on. The centre punch just makes a hole that I can get my drill tip into and hopefully not skate around. And then very carefully, particularly at this end of the neck, just drill some little shallow holes which I'm going to push the posts into. And of course there's going to be 2 where the octave is. So what I'm going to be putting in is these tiny little plastic posts. Just a little blob of super glue on there. Push them in, snip them off. That should be enough. Please go in. One done. So we're fully dotted up. It looks great. But the next thing we need to do is get some frets in here. And fretting it whilst it's off the body is one hell of a lot easier than it is fretting it whilst it's attached to the body. The body gets in the way. You also run the risk of damaging the body itself whilst you're trying to do the fret edges and all that sort of thing. It does, of course, knock down the road a small problem that we will encounter, and that is that when we clamp this back into the body, we're going to have to avoid squishing the frets into the fretboard, and that will happen if you clamp really tightly. Welcome back to Philosophy Corner. Now, I've been away for a couple of months, and so there's quite a big gap between this and the previous episode. I've been doing a lot of things in that time, but one of the most important things I was doing was this. Yes, at the age of 63, I passed my driving test, and American people will find that very funny because I think you take your driving test when you're like 10 or 11, I think. But now with my plans to try and get out of this hellhole called the UK, it became obvious that I had to get a driving licence. So that's what I did, and I think I mentioned this in the context of making a difference. A lot of the comments on the messages that you've been sending me are how it makes a difference to have things explained and that it's inspired you to do something. And I'm so happy to hear that. To hear that you've inspired somebody to do something as wonderful as making guitar is truly inspirational for me. And I want you to get on with it, and I want you to do it because it is a joy, and I hope you enjoy it. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Let's get back to the build. If you follow my videos, you've seen this all before. I've done this at least twice before, but fretting is just a pivotal part of guitar making, and it's worth repeating and it's worth getting good at. You need some basic tools. You need something to cut the fret wire with, something to tap it in with, and something to cut the tang so that the ends are a little bit neater. More about that as we go through. So let's do some fretting. So let's just take some fret wire, measure it, cut it, and then what we need to do is just put that into the slot. Yeah, that fits lovely. And I'm just going to cut the tang off the end because I don't want the tang poking out at the end. So put that in the slot, hold it in place with your finger, give it a tap, and then I use a fret press. If you've got a fret press, tap it in. This operation then becomes very straightforward. There we go, squish in. Don't squeeze it too much, I've made that mistake before, and ended up forcing the fret actually into the wood, which is not good. Okay, that's one fret done. Continue like that until you've populated the entire neck. So I'm just going to crack on and you can watch. The advantage of the press is you get a nice even pressure across the fret, which makes the whole process much more uniform. So there we go, we're all fretted. Yeah, too much ebony coming off now. So I'm now going to swap to my finest of my engineering smooth files. You can hear it's so much nicer. And now I'm just going to run that down there. I mean, I brace it in my hand and I hold it at a certain angle. And by looking at the metallic heads that I'm filing away, I can actually see the angle I'm putting on it, like what goes silver. I can also see how much I'm touching the fretboard. That's good. Okay, I think we can say now we've got the angle on the edge of the frets that we need. So let's move on to the next step. Now I just had a little bit of a mini flap. I couldn't find this tool, this tiny little thing I'm holding here. This is my fret end dressing file. It's a little Japanese file. It's got a rounded side and a flat side and then two abrasive sides. Now you use it for effectively rounding off the ends of the frets. So what you need to do is to take off the squared ends by holding the flat side, which has got no teeth on it at all, onto the fretboard, and then you just work around to take off the sides of the frets. Otherwise they sprout, believe it or not, as the wood shrinks and stick in your hands. And also this is the best opportunity you're going to get to make these frets feel really quite different. Right, here's a process you might be familiar with, bluing up your frets. Now, bluing up the frets is literally putting blue ink on your frets. And I'm putting a blue strip on the top of every single fret. So we just take a levelling beam. This one's 10 inches radius, and we move up and down. And we should see quite quickly, yep, some of them the blue's disappearing, some of it's barely touched. Obviously it's absolutely essential that you get the neck set flat. With my straight edge I've checked all that, so that is absolutely flat. And then we can see quite quickly we're beginning to lose the blue. And when all the blue is gone, we're level. Before we go any further, we need to protect this wonderful ebony fretboard. So what I'm going to do is going to tape the neck up in between all the frets, just so that we don't damage them. Time to get out a luthier's friend and re-blue the top of these frets again. By re-bluing the tops again, I can see that when I'm using my crowning tool that I'm just leaving the thinnest slither of blue. So, out with the blue, here we go. Now, I've been accused of being pretty elitist about my crowning tools. The classic crowning tool is this triangular affair, and they're just great. You just go in there and they've got bits on the corner points where they're knocked off flat, so you can actually go across and do a really nice job. It's quite skilled, quite laborious, and hard work. So I invested in what is called a Z-file from StewMac. Now, I've been pretty critical of StewMac in the past, but this particular file is fantastic. Got a V-shaped trough, 2 sizes, 1 in each side, a diamond piece of kit. Excuse the pun. So we've got to get this little last bit of blue off the tip and start cleaning these frets up ready for polishing. Now I'm going to use a bit of emery cloth. I don't know what you call that in America. It's basically a very fine grit based on fabric backing. It's great stuff. It's perfect for this job. So I'm just going to go up and down this way to begin with. And I'm not just getting off the blue, I'm beginning to sort of round off the tops of these frets. I mean, the whole process so far has actually marked up these frets quite severely, and this stuff is abrasive enough to get rid of it. It's also quite nice to run it down the edge like this and start rounding over those fret ends that we took so much trouble with. Good. Okay, I think I'm ready now to swap over to my next abrasive. Now, I've got a lot of these. These are microfiber pads. Initially they're all in different colours, and the different colours of the pads denote the size of the grit. Unfortunately, as you use them, the colours wear off and you have no idea what they are, but it's actually quite easy just by feeling them to find out what they are. Start with the coarsest, work up and down the neck, go over each fret and polish them up. Now, I've discovered the trick with these things is to go across like this, up and down the neck, going across all the frets. This is quite an abrasive one. This is like number 1, if you like. You'll have to look the grits up. I have no idea what it is. It's quite gritty. And then once you've got them looking half tidy, nice and shiny, ruin it, go across the other way again like this. Go across them. I used to go nuts by doing each fret individually, being really, really fastidious about shaping and all the rest of it. It took ages and ages, and it made very little difference. This method of doing them as a sort of group works particularly well, I think. There we are. I'm going up and down the length again, doing the edges. That's great.
The process from here is pretty logical. You start with the coarse ones, and you work your way all the way through the grades to the finest.
I think this is the last one. And start finishing up. Getting a fine finish on the frets is something that as luthiers we can do better than the factories. And talking of finishing, I think I'm going to finish it today. Lots been going on and a lot's coming up, but it's been great fun to be back. And join me next time for the next programme. Keep building.
I shall indeed keep building towards episode 6. Please subscribe and I'll see you soon.